Om Shanti and welcome back to Light of Knowledge with Meera Didi. We are going to talk about ego and self-respect, the thin line between ego and self-respect. How do we know if we're being egoistic or we are in self-respect? Once we ascertain for ourselves that maybe we have a little ego, how do we do the transition from ego to self-respect? So to help us with these issues, we have Meera Didi with us once again, and let us all welcome her. Meera Didi, thanks for being with us.
Thank you.
Didi, today we are going to talk about ego and self-respect. You know, there's a very thin line between ego and self-respect. Some people can be egoistic, but they may think that they are having a self-respect. So there's a lot of confusion out there. So if we could start with the definition, what does ego mean and what does it mean to be in self-respect?
See, this word, which is made up of three letters, E-G-O, ego is equal to fear.
Okay.
I understood for the first time, and it was very touching for me. I never thought that ego is equal to fear.
Okay.
But only when I understood the definition of ego, then I agree. So for me, ego is wrong identification
Okay.
that I have developed about myself.
Okay.
You know, ego always comes with I.
Yes,
I.
I.
No,
Right.
capital I,
Right.
big I.
Right. Right.
So which means when I consider myself to be this body, a wrong identification, then I will connect everything connected with body, my name, my position, my culture, my family background, my education, my talents. I am this, I am this. So
Right.
I develop that ego. It's a false identification.
Okay. Okay.
And that is why, you know, when there is ego, you get attached to it. Whichever object you have, you identify yourself, you get attached to it.
Okay.
And when you get attached to something, you don't want to let go.
That's
of,
right.
Because you have the fear of losing.
That's right.
So that is how it is said, ego is equal to fear.
Okay.
So people who have ego, they actually use the self-defensive mechanism to protect their ego by showing their bossiness, you know.
Okay.
They shout, they show their authority, but inside they are very weak.
Okay.
You can see, you know, if you say something which they don't like, immediately they will react. So that is a sign of ego, which is inside is fear, but externally it is a big show.
Okay. Okay.
Because there is no respect for the self.
So it sounds like both are inversely proportional. Like if you have higher ego, then you have a lower self-respect?
Yes, definitely.
Okay.
Suppose, for example, what is the definition of self-respect? So self-respect is to accept myself as I am, what I am and who I am.
Okay.
And so I have that dignity about myself. So if somebody insults me, I won't get angry. Okay. You know, but if there is ego, I easily get angry because I don't know myself who I am. And so I am living on the basis of the external things. So I get very easily affected.
Right.
You know, the sign of ego is they feel insult, they feel disrespected. But if you have self-respect, because you know yourself, who you are, what you are, and so you will not be affected.
Right.
You know, self-respect allows you to be humble.
Okay.
You know, just like, because they are full.
Right, right.
You know, somebody who is having self-respect, they feel full. And because of that fullness, they are able to bow.
Right.
Bow to another person, not because they are great and they are nothing, but they recognize the speciality of that soul and appreciate that. So they bow.
Right.
So humility and self-respect go together.
Right. Very nice.
You know,
it almost
and
sounds
ego and fear go together.
ego and fear. Ego and fear and humility and self-respect.
Yeah.
Yes, that's very nicely said. It almost sounds like ego has a very negative connotation to it,
Yeah.
and self-respect has a positive connotation to it.
Yeah.
But yet, believe it or not, there are people out there who may say that it is good to have a little ego.
No, it is not ego actually. That is a misunderstanding. It is not that you should have a little bit of ego, but it is you need to have self-respect.
Okay.
Self-pride, self-prestige,
Okay.
self-dignity.
Okay.
So if I have that, then I will not be affected no matter how much I am criticized or I am defamed or,
Right.
I will not be affected. Yeah.
When it comes to an individual personal level, for me, for example, how do I know whether I have ego or I have self-respect? I mean, because this is such a fine line between the two,
Yeah.
is there a way for me to identify that what I'm holding, is it ego or is it
So
self-respect?
see, if there is self-ego, as I said, you easily react.
Okay.
Every little thing you react.
Okay.
And secondly, if I have ego, I will easily feel insulted.
Okay.
I feel I've been disregarded. But if I have self-respect, I will not react.
Okay.
I will respond.
Okay.
Yeah, instead of reacting, I
Okay.
will respond.
Okay.
If I have self-respect, I will not get upset. I will accept that whatever comment given as a future, warning for me.
Okay.
But I will not have any kind of reaction from my side.
Okay.
And so you can see both will, whether it is ego or self-respect, you use the word I.
Right.
But I need to check my consciousness. In what consciousness I am using this word I. I am. I will use the same word. But when I am soul conscious, when I use the word I am, I recognize myself with the being of light.
Okay.
But when I use the word I am in body consciousness, which is ego, then I will identify myself with this body.
Okay.
My name, my position, my occupation, and so I feel that I'm superior.
Okay.
So someone who has ego, they have superiority complex.
Okay.
They overestimate themselves.
Okay.
But when you have self-respect, there is no superiority complex or inferiority complex. So they are just able to create that balance.
Okay. Okay.
So they don't underestimate themselves or overestimate.
Okay.
When you have self-respect, you don't think you are nothing or you don't think you are everything. But you just know who you are.
Okay. Okay.
And so in that way, I have openness to learn. When you are given correction,
Right.
when you make a mistake, if you have self-respect, you accept it in a positive way.
Right. Right.
But when I have ego, when I have been corrected,
Right.
I will begin to react and try to prove and justify that I did not do it and try to put blame on other person and create a molehill into a mountain.
Correct.
Because someone who has ego, they are hungry for name and fame and respect and position.
Attention.
Yes, attention.
Yeah.
And so they feel that they are being left out.
Okay. So, I understand, for example, that I have ego, I have body consciousness. How do I make this transition or the shift from being egoistic to having self-respect?
So, first of all, actually, I need to understand that life is not just made up of body, which is of bone, flesh, and muscles. Life is beyond that.
Right.
So, I need to realize that there is a existence of the soul in the body, and then each one of us as a soul have our own part to play.
Okay.
So this is what I like very much, that when you have self-respect, you accept whatever part that is given to you and play it happily.
Okay.
But when there is ego, one cannot accept. They always feel that they can be better. And so there is no contentment in their life. There is always discontentment. And so they suffer from sometimes hopelessness and sometimes overconfidence. And so I need to really, work on this.
Okay.
Accept myself, my role, and play it happily.
Okay.
And in order to do that, one thing I need to bring in my life is I must know I am very special.
Okay.
Not in the form of ego, but because I have a role to play. So we are all like a small screw in a machine. And even if one screw is missing, the whole machine is useless.
Right.
And so when I understand that kind of value, it's a kind of giving self-worth, understanding self-value. Because self-worth and self-value are the components of self-respect.
Right, right.
And so, but in ego, I always wait for somebody else to tell me
that I'm good.
Yes, I'm good. Then I feel good. I wait for self-approval.
Right, right.
But in self-respect, you don't need self-approval.
Okay.
Because you know who you are,
Right.
and though you don't need to, no need to be like a beggar, hungry for receiving.
Give me.
They may not ask openly, but there is a feeling of being rejected, left out, if you are not given that attention.
Right.
But when there is self-respect, even if you are disrespected, you don't feel it.
Right.
You don't spoil your relationship, and you maintain your dignity because you know who you are,
right.
where you are standing.
Right.
So I think nowadays this is a biggest problem of identity,
Identity crisis.
Identity crisis.
Right.
That is why ego has led people to fight war, Many battles are fought because of ego. Ego leads to anger.
Right, right.
It's a product of anger. Anger is because of ego.
Right, right.
Like in a family, for example, if a father thinks I am the head of the family and all the members of the family should listen to me, I am the boss. And if they don't, he gets angry and then he will spoil his relationship.
Right.
But nowadays it doesn't work. Children doesn't want to be handled like a bossy, authority. Most of the people now, they are anti-authority.
Right.
So if you want to win the hearts of the people, you have to bow down.
Right, right.
You have to be very humble. You have to really, come down to their level. Like, for example, if a father or mother wants to correct the children for their mistake, and if they have in their mind ego, I know better than this child.
Right.
So if that ego is there and you're correcting your child, you also arouse the ego in the child also.
That's very true.
And so there is a clash of ego.
Right, right.
So then nothing is going to work.
Right. This is a very important message for our viewers out there today, with families.
Yeah.
That if everybody works with their ego, there's never going to be any harmony.
No.
Whereas if you kind of learn to have self-respect,
Yeah.
then it's going to go a long way.
And so self-respect is actually knowing myself, who I am, what I am, my capabilities, my weaknesses.
Right.
That's very important. You must know your weaknesses, you must know your specialities.
Right.
And so I am able to accept when correction is given because I know this is my weakness, I have to improve. I am not a perfect person.
Right, right.
But at the same time, I also have respect for myself because I have certain specialities too. But usually what happens is when you ask anybody today, tell me one speciality and one virtue, they will always say, I don't have any virtues. I can talk about my weakness.
Oh, no. Okay.
But actually that is also ego.
Is that right?
And not to know my speciality is also ego.
I never thought of it that way.
Because see, actually they know, but they want to hear other people talking about their specialty, then they feel good. Why do I want to wait another person to talk about my specialty when I know myself? So work on yourself. Identify your weaknesses. It's nothing wrong if I have weakness. And identify your specialities and use your specialty as God's gift.
Nice. Yeah.
Not my specialty. Again, if it is not being used, I feel like I have specialty, but nobody is using me. Nobody is giving me chance. But use it as God's gift. Then you will have humility.
You've given a very important tip. It sounds like if we actually make a list of my specialties and then my weaknesses, that will help in this transition that I asked you about.
And weaknesses, see, if I accept my weaknesses, so if somebody is talking about my weaknesses, I won't get upset because I already know. And if somebody praise me for my specialties, I won't become, blown up. I am that. So it will always happen in life. Somebody will praise me, somebody will insult me. So I can maintain that balance. And one of the benefits of learning Raj Yoga is that you will able to enhance your self-respect. You are able to enhance your self-respect because you identify your specialities as well as weaknesses. And you know that I am not a perfect human being. I want to become perfect. So somebody who is humble, they always have the learning attitude. So they won't react for correction, and so they keep their open mind, and so they are able to learn from everyone. But when there is ego, I know. And no patience. Ego makes you impatient.
So impatience is also a sign of ego.
Yeah, because when I have ego, for example, you are telling me something, and I have that ego, I already know about it. And so I am not listening to you attentively, I am only waiting to tell what I want to say. So impatient, I cannot listen. Sometimes we don't even listen properly. Interrupt. Oh, I know already. So which means that I don't allow that person to say what they want to say, and they won't trust me. So impatience is also a product of ego. But if you have self-respect, you listen actively, and then you respond. So you create a kind of trust about you in others.
Very true.
Ego never allows you to listen carefully.
And ego can also make you like lonely and depressed. And
because then people won't be friendly to you because they think that, oh, this person is always above the head, So it's no point talking to them. They don't listen to me. And so you won't have any friends. And so you will be left alone. That's why they say ego has a fall. Pride has a fall, So that's why we have to be humble. Having the attitude of learning, because we know that the more we know, the more we realize how little we know. So this awareness of I actually is a very dangerous thing. So I need to check myself in what consciousness I'm using this word I am. So if I'm using the same word in soul consciousness, it makes me humble.
This is a very important statement again that you said, that if I really look at the universe and then I think that I really don't know anything, compared to what's out there, that itself will be a humbling experience. And that will help me overcome my ego to some extent.
I want to know more. Always you are a seeker. So the more you are a seeker, the more you learn. But once I have ego, I close my doors. I know. So then I cannot grow.
In Raj Yoga, are there any specific practices for this where you can curb your ego and grow your self-respect?
So what we do is we don't talk about conquering ego first, but we emphasize on enhancing our self-respect.
So automatically the ego will go.
It's better to work on the positive side.
Correct.
And so then you begin to realize that what I'm doing is not right. And that is because I was empty inside. So I was seeking for something to fill up the emptiness. But now when you practice self-respect, when you practice soul consciousness, when you know yourself, who you are, when you give time to be with yourself, empower yourself, so then you feel the power, and so the ego gets weaker and weaker. So in a way, what I call it as dismantle ego. When you develop self-respect, you dismantle ego automatically.
That's true. Didi, we're talking about ego and self-respect, and these two factors play heavily in a family as well. Small children in families, they are in their budding ages, and how do the parents, or what roles do the parents play in developing the self-respect of a child?
No, according to child psychology, they say that parents should not pass any negative comments towards the children until the age of 4 or 5, because whatever comments passed to the children, that becomes the foundation of their life. And as they grow up with that awareness, I am no good, I am bad. So my mommy told me. And so when they go to school, even if the same thing happens by the teachers, so it leads to a great opposite to ego, depression. And so they start thinking negative, about themselves. I am no good, they become inferior. So it's not ego, but then it's depression. And so they are not able to live happily in the society. So they create a kind of negative image about themselves. And nowadays, that is also the biggest problem. 1 out of every 4 person, they say, suffer from depression. Because they think negative about themselves, because they are told by their teachers, by their peers and parents, so I'm no good. And so to come out of that is a very difficult situation.
And unknowingly parents may do that, not realizing that they're affecting their child in such a negative way.
So this education is important.
Yes. Didi, thank you so much for this beautiful conversation we've had today. And we are so happy and pleased that we've had you for this series. And I'm sure our audience out there must have also enjoyed our conversations. So we thank you once again for being with us. Om Shanti.
You.
Today we had this beautiful discussion with Meera Didi on ego and self-respect and the thin line between the two. She gave us a very beautiful definition of what ego is and what self-respect is. And once we have analyzed and ascertained for ourselves that maybe we have a little ego, she has also given us tips on how to go beyond ego into self-respect. Another important thing that she talked about was in Raj Yoga, they don't focus on ego or cutting down the ego. Instead, they focus on building up the self-respect. And that's a very important point to note. I hope you've enjoyed this series of discussions that we've had with Meera Didi. If you have any comments, concerns, or any questions, please write to us and we'll definitely write back to you. Thank you for your support. Thanks for watching us. Take care and Om Shanti.